are learning, right? It looks like bits and pieces, right? Yeah. So as we are learning core concepts, we're going to learn those are individual components. Once we have started writing our first RESTful web services, right? Then so all these concepts will be like incorporated in that one example, right? So now we are just learning all the basics, right? That's why we are just doing this bits and pieces learning. Okay. Yes. Yeah. So today topic is scopes. Okay. Just before we directly jump into the spring, I just like to cover one small core Java concept. Okay, because there is a terminology like singleton. You get confused with the Java and Spring. Okay, so in Java, what is singleton is meant to be?
You can only create one object for a class.
Mm-hmm.
Only one object created per JVM.
Exactly, right? So like you can spin up many JVM instances, right? If you run two servers, which means there are two JVM instances are running, right? So what exactly it means? Like singleton means, for example, if you say, hey, this class is single, right? So what is the world will assume that, okay, per JVM, we can able to create only one object for that class. Okay. So in Java, we don't have any default support, right? You have to write some extra code to make your Java class a singleton. But what does that mean of singleton in Java? For JVM, you can create only one object, right, for that class. But if you have more than one JVM instance, which means, for example, you would spin up more servers, right? If you spin up like 2-3 servers, right, then which means like 2-3 JVMs are running. So like we will be having 2-3 objects, right? So which means per JVM, it is only one instance, right? So how can we achieve this, right? So the first thing is there are few steps we have to follow, right? So it's very easy, not that much complicated, right? For example, you are writing some my singleton, right? So my singleton. So the first thing is we have to restrict, right? We have to restrict creating object for this class, right? The outside world, they're not supposed to create an object. So what should I do? I should write a private constructor.
Private.
Yes. So what should I do? I should write a private constructor. So once we make the constructor as private, once we make the constructor as private, so no one can create object for this class, right? So the first step, we are restricting, right? No one can create object for the class. And whoever wants to get the object of this class, so we do provide a method, right? We do provide a method of static, okay? Static method, which returns the object of this class, okay? Object of this class. So you can just call anything, any name you can provide, but give a meaningful name, right? My singleton instance. You just provide something like this, right? My singleton instance. So here, what we will do, we will return the object of my singleton. But we have a problem, right? If 2 times you call this method, there are 2 objects will be created because every time we are creating a new object. So that is not is meant to be a singleton. So what we must do, we must restrict, right? We must control. We want to create only one object. So what we do, we do create a variable, right? Private static my singleton equals to new my singleton. Okay, and the already created object we're going to return in our method, right? So this is going to be my singleton instance. We will return this reference variable. Why I did that static? Why I made this static?
So that you can
Can
access
be
from
shared
that.
across.
Exactly. So static variables only can be accessed inside a static method, right? Java core concept. So without making static, if you are trying to access, you can't get that variable, right? So just I also make the final, right? Future no one can change this, right? One more bean instance cannot be created, right? So only one creation, and that is going to be returned all that, right? So this is how we do achieve singleton design pattern in Java, right? In Java. So there are another design pattern is internally incorporated. What is that? Factory design pattern. So what is a factory design pattern? If any method, right, if any method returns of, right, if any method returns the object, right, if any method returns the object of that particular class, then you call that as a factory, right? Factory design pattern. As we are appending this static method, so you call this a static factory design pattern. If you don't have static, then it is a instance factory design pattern. Okay, again, static factory design pattern two types. One is a static factory where you have the static method which returns the same object of that particular class, right? So that's called static factory design pattern. So in the singleton design pattern internally has factory method in factory design pattern internally. So right, whenever you just want to achieve singleton design pattern, internally we implement factory design pattern. Okay, so in Java, this is what it meant to be singleton design pattern. Just for your idea, I'm telling this, but don't compare Spring, okay, live Spring scopes with the um, this one Java's design pattern. Okay, Java's design pattern, because the word sounds the same, right? Singleton. So you get a little confused. Okay, in JVM singleton means only one object, or in Spring also, which means in container one object, not like that. Okay, so we have a different meaning for this. So just before I'm going to explain this, right, I just wanted to you to quickly recap, right? Quickly recap what is singleton design pattern in Java. So this is what is singleton design pattern in Java. So this is how we do write it. Okay. Yes. Now let's come to Spring. So any questions here?
No, sir.
Yeah. Everybody say something. No. Yes. Just don't be silent. Yeah. Let's make the session interactive, right? Just try to involve yourself, right? So that you will not get deviated, right? Yeah, just try to give some answer. Yes, no, fine. Multiple no answers also. I don't. I don't ask any. Okay, if somebody said, okay, I have a question, then I will answer. Try to answer his question. Okay. So yeah, no questions, right? Give me yes, everybody. Jupudi, Viji, Jagadish.
Yes, no questions.
Yeah. So if you don't answer, what I will think, you just log in. Okay, you just for God's sake, you log in into this meeting and you are doing some other work. If you don't answer, then it will be treated like that. So are you doing the same, or are you just focusing on this training? Everybody,
Yes, we are focusing on training.
yeah, got only one response. So
Listening only.
no, yeah, just trying to grab your attention. I'm just trying to hear voice from everybody so that I can just understood, right? Everybody will be focused. Because if I try to explain something, if you don't fully focus, right, you may ask a question, or you may just deviate it, right? So that's why I just want you to focus fully. Yes. Yeah, now it's time to learn what is the scope in Spring. Okay. Okay, so there are multiple types of scopes are present, right? A bean, once you create a bean in Spring, so the scope of this bean, right? So there are multiple ways you can configure, So by defaultly, Spring bean scope is singleton. Okay, now just now I told, right, don't compare with the Java singleton. So this is a different singleton. Okay, this is a different singleton. So what is the singleton then? Okay, now let's go to, yeah, so this we already know, right? So we have our JVM. So inside JVM, so we have Spring container creation, right? So we have Spring container creation. So inside this Spring container creation, So when you create, right, when you create a particular bean, for example, you are creating a, okay, for example, you are creating a bean called class A. Okay, simple, very, very simple. You created one object. So as it is created by the Spring, so we call this as bean, and this is the type of A, class A, right? And the reference variable which we assigned as A1. Let's assume that, right? So when I just diagrammatically explain this, right, you have to visualize. So how you gonna write this code in Java configuration? How you gonna write the code, right, in XML configuration, in annotation, how it's going to happen, right? So just you have to visualize, right, at bean annotation, bean tag, so those things should come into your mind. Okay, so now I created an object for class A, right, and I assigned it to A1. Now I say that, okay, by defaultly this this bean, right, whatever we created is a singleton. So I say that, okay, now I'm telling that by default scope of every bean is singleton, right? So now there is another question should rise immediately, right, on your mind. Okay, in Java, okay, if I say the same concept, if I say the same concept here, okay, I created an object for A, right? I created an object for class A, okay, and I assign this to a variable called A, simple A, not A1, right? So, and I say if it is a singleton, so what you will assume, okay, this is the only object which is going to be served, right? How many number of times I request JVM give object of A, give object of A, how many number of time I'm going to ask Spring as a JVM is going to return the same object. It won't create another object, right? Yes, kind of similarity we have here, right? Kind of similarity we have here. So now let's come back to the Spring. Now we created class A object, and we just made, right, we just assigned it to A1 variable. So how many number of times you do write this code, right? Context.getBean. So don't ask me what is context.getBean, right? We are writing this for like almost like 4 or 5 sessions onwards, right? So, and I pass a1 comma a dot class, right? A dot class, and I assign this to a variable a comma a1, right? A comma a1. Right? If you just repeat this statement, if you just repeat this statement for 10 times or 20 times, right? 10 times or 20 times, yeah. So, right, 10 times or 20 times. So what is the benefit you're gonna get? All the 10 times or 20 times you're gonna get same object, right? So now we have some kind of similarity. Now we have some kind of similarity. Okay, at least for class A, right, with this ID, how many number of times you are trying to ask container, right? You are trying to ask Spring container, can you please give me object of A? Can you please give me context object of A? Can you please give me context of object of A, right? So you're gonna get the same object till now here and same line, right? Okay, Java and Spring both are okay. That is what our assumption, right? There is a small change we're gonna do now, right? But both are not same. There is a slight difference we have. Okay, what is that? I'm going to tell you.
Here the variable names are different.
Yeah.
A1, A2, A3.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I have to change this A2, A3, A4. Yes, otherwise the code will not compare for sure. Yeah, that's true. Sorry, I forgot to change it. I thought I'll copy paste.
No, the point is I'm understand. Maybe so there are
Yeah,
different references that are created.
yeah. So now, yeah. So now the same object is going to be pointed by multiple reference variables. Okay, the same object, so which is nothing but what is happening here. We are getting the same object and we are assigning multiple reference variables, right? A2 dot get name, or A2 dot, for example, if you are creating an employee object, something like this. Okay, employee object, now it will be more better, it will be much better, right? So if, for example, assume that, right, so if you create an employee object, right, so employee emp1, employee emp1, and you are just assigning, you are retrieving it, right? So now you call that emp, yeah. So change the right side structure also. So here also it's going to be EMP1, right? EMP2, EMP3, EMP4, EMP5, EMP6, EMP7, EMP8, EMP9. So you call EMP1 dot get name and EMP8 dot get name or EMP5 dot get name. All the times, what will happen? The same employee name will be printed. So what we are doing, we are just simply, right? We are just simply trying to assign multiple reference variables to the same object. Okay, we are trying to assign multiple of reference variables to the same object, whether you do employee 1 dot get name or employee 9 dot get name, employee 5 dot get name, are all employee 1 2 3, right? Inside a for loop you just try to get it right. So all employees are going to be the same, pointed to same object. That is just a different reference variable. Okay, so it's the same object. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. But now the change will start. Now the movie will get a turning point. Okay. So in Java, if it is a singleton, with this I'm done, right? So with this I'm done. I can't able to, in my heap memory, I cannot have one more object of type same class A, right? But when it is coming to Spring, there are no restrictions. You can create how many number of objects you want to create for the same type, right? This is also A type and this is also A type. So you can create one more object. There is no problem. But now I would say, again, this object is another singleton bean, another singleton bean. So in Spring, right? So when we talk about bean scopes, the scopes are with respect to the IDs, right? So with this particular ID, you could create only one bean. So we call that as a singleton, right? With this particular ID, you could create only one bean. So how many number of times you do context.get bean, the same ID you are passing, right? Same ID you are passing. So the same object you wanna get it, right? Same ID you are passing. So the same object you wanna get it. But in Java, you are assigning it to a different variable. That's in Java, you are assigning it to a different reference variable. So when you are passing an ID, same ID, all the time, the same object will be written. So now we created one more object called A2. So again, this is a singleton object, right? So how many number of times you do, if you create one more employee with employee ID 2, right? Employee ID 2, not employee ID 1 this time. Okay, employee ID 2. So this is another singleton beans. How many number of times you do lookup, right? Context.get bean, context.get bean, context.get bean, and you are passing ID employee to, still you keep on getting the same employee object only. For example, the first employee name is Sunil Manaka, right? So for example, the first employee name is Sunil Manaka, and the second employee name is James. So how many number of times you do EMP1, EMP2, or whatever it is, right? In first case, you get the same Sunil Manaka name will be printed. And the second case, you get the James name will be printed. Okay, so in Spring, singleton meant to be, which will be associated to IDE, and how many number of times you are performing the lookup, how many number of times you are performing the lookup, R, okay, how many number of times you do auto write. For example, you have a class, right? You have a class yesterday, right? Party you have, right? You have party, in party I want a music, right? So in yesterday's session, we were talking about this, right? We have a party, right? So it's going to be private music, right? Music and music. So here you use one auto white, okay? And you have another, right? You have another event type called marriage, right? Marriage. So you do one more auto while, so the same music will be injected. If you have created only one music, right? For example, the same music object will be injected in party and marriage also, right? So that is what is singleton is meant to be. So these two are same only, right? Just we are doing auto where, but internally this is equivalent to what? Context dot get bean, right? Context dot get bean, and the id is this, right? Id is this, and the class is this, something like this. It's going something like this, it's going to be, right? So you are performing a lookup. So when the default scope, if you don't provide any scope, default is singleton, default is singleton. So how many number of auto wires you do, it doesn't matter. How many number of times you do context dot get pin, it doesn't matter. So until unless you retrieve the by same id, you're gonna get the same object back. So that is what a singleton is meant to be. But in Java, the things were little different. Per JVM, one object, but here per container, you can create multiple objects, but still they are singleton because you're going to get the same object with respect to ID. So in Spring, the bean scope is relevant, right? It's associated with ID, right? It's associated with ID, not with the JVM. Is it clear?
Yes, Anil.
Okay, so how many number of times you do auto while, it doesn't matter, the same bean will be injected. So this is what is the default scope of, right, which is singleton, right? So singleton, so don't get confused with the Java singleton and Spring singleton. These two are different, right? These two are different. Okay, and in Spring, the bean will always associated with ID. So with that particular ID, that bean is going to be singleton. How many number of times you get it, the same bean you gonna get it, right? So that is what is a singleton is meant to be. So now if you are clear, then I go to the next scope, prototype. Prototype, it is pretty easy, but this is the only thing which is little confusing, because still now, right? So it's almost like 10 to like, I mean, when we become a software engineer, that time onwards we are hearing singleton per JVM one instance. But when it is coming to the Spring, the singleton is meant to be different. So from today, somebody is coming and asking you what is singleton, then first question is what? In Java, in Spring, in which perspective you are asking that question, right? So that is the second, the kind of question you're gonna ask now, right? Because in Spring the singleton is little different, in Java in singleton is different, right? It is different. So whenever you in somebody is asking anywhere if what is singleton, right? Then you must ask where, in which perspective you are asking, but don't ask in an interview, right? If somebody is all of a sudden the interviewer is asking what is singleton, don't rudely say, hey, what is, hey, which perspective you are asking, Java or Spring? Then he will get right. His ego will get hurted, right? So whether you give the right answer, also you won't consider, right? So you have to tell these two stories. So in Java, this is what is the singleton, but in Spring, this is what. Now you have to tell the complete story. If it is an interview, but somebody is asking in your office, a friend or somebody trying to check your knowledge, right? Then you have to reversely give a counterpoint, right? Hey, in which perspective you are asking, not for the interview. Don't make interviewer anger, okay? Yes. So can I continue to the next topic? Give
Yeah,
me yes,
please.
everybody.
Yes, Anil.
Yeah, Venkat, Chintesh.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, Anil.
Yeah. Okay. What's up? You guys are so dull early in the morning. Okay. Come on, guys. Okay. Because next topic is singleton itself is confusing, right? Just the next topic is more confusing concept, like mixing two scopes, right? It's a like deadliest topic in the in Spring. Okay. Yes. The next topic is prototype. Prototype. So if you just want to get a coffee or something, right? Provide your sleep and I'll get some chocolate, right? Just have just try to avoid that sleep. Okay. So now the things we are little different for the next scope, right? So this is not a default scope. You have to mention, hey, I want this prototype scope, right? Prototype scope. Yes. Now the things were little different. Now the things were little different in the old example, right? In the old example, so if I do something like this after some point of time, right? If I do something like this, okay, so yeah, let's just focus here, sys out. Okay, sys out. emp1 dot, sorry, emp1 dot get name. Let's assume that we are printing name, right? We are printing name after getting every employee object, right? So it's just employee one all the time, but whenever it's next to that reference variable, right? It's just that, okay, just think that, okay, the next, this is next to emp2, so this is emp2. Okay, it's emp3, it's emp4, right? Okay, now what I will do, I just do this kind of change, right? Emp dot set name. Okay, I'll just change the update my name to Sunil Manaka to Sunil Kumar, right? So yeah, after this we do the same concept, right? So get it, print it, get it, print it, right? So okay, let me change the reference variable here to like emp5, emp6, yes, emp7, emp8, right? emp9. Okay, there we go. We are good here, right? So now tell me, what is the answer we're gonna get? What is the answer we're gonna get? What is going to be printed? So line number 4, you're gonna get Sunil Manaka. Line number 5, you're gonna get Sunil Manaka. Right, sorry, 6, right? So here we're gonna get Sunil Manaka. Yes, here also the same thing will be printed. But from now onwards, right, what will be printed? We will get Sunil Kumar. Instead of getting Sunil Manaka, we'll get Sunil Kumar, because it's the same object. If you just update the value in the object, the remaining references, right? For the remaining references, the value will get changed. So after that, after you are updating value, even though you are doing employee one that get, so if you try to get print this, right? Employee one also, till you get Sunil Kumar only printed, because we are changing the actual copy, right? We are changing the actual copy. Are you guys are clear? Why we are getting this output?
So, Sunil,
Yeah.
this is on Singleton only, right?
Singleton only. I'm in Singleton here.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, yeah.
Yeah. Just before going to prototype, just want you to show some example, right? I'll change this, right? Simply I change Singleton to prototype. Now the output will change a little bit, right? Output will change a little bit. So example wise, you're gonna understand. So are you guys are clear why we are getting Sunil Manaka printed for some time? So after updating this, right? So because we have one object created, right? So what is happening? Right? Yeah, so in our Spring context area, there is only one object created, right? So there is only one object created. So this is my employee object, and by default, this is going to be assigned to emp1 ID in Spring, right? emp1 ID in Spring. So later in Java, we are getting this, right? We are in Java, we are getting this, and we are assigning to multiple variables called emp1, emp2, emp3, emp4, something like that, right? So we are assigning it to multiple variables, but it is the same object, right? So by default, the initial stage we assign, right? We give a value like employee name is Sunil Manaka. After some time, we are updating, so the old copy will be removed. Then you're gonna get a new copy saying that Sunil Kumar. So when you get .get name after updating, right? So where we are updating it. So after right here, so set the name, right? So after you updating, so this is we are updating the name. So after you are getting an update, so it's a single object. That is the reason why we are whenever you call with the old reference variable also, just we are getting the updated value, because it's a single object. So in a single object, we have the value. So you just update it. That object, entire object will be updated. Going forward, you're going to get the updated value, not the old value. Okay. Yes. Yes. This is Singleton. Whatever we discussed, Singleton. Now I'm going to talk, right? Prototype. Right. So now if I remove the Singleton, I don't want to be go ahead with singleton scope, right? Singleton scope. If I change it to prototype, right? What is the difference? In the same output, Yes. So first you get the employee one that get name Sunil Manaka printed, because it's an object you are initializing value, right? So Sunil Manaka will be printed, but the difference is here, especially here, right? System.out.println employee.getName, employee4.getName, you get the default value, and you are updated to Sunil Kumar. But what I'm doing, this is employee one, right? First reference variable. If you just call the get name, you don't get the updated value. You get the the initialized value itself, because every time you call this context dot get bean, what Spring will do, if the scope is prototype, right? So if the scope is prototype, every time you request Spring container to return an object, every time you request Spring container to return an object, Spring container will create a new object, right? So how many number of times you are performing the lookup here, right? So there are around 9 times you are performing the lookup, right? So how many objects will be created here?
9
Nine.
10.
objects.
Yeah.
9, right? 9 objects will be created. So how many objects will be created? 9 objects will be created if when the scope is prototype. If I change back to singleton, now tell me how many objects will be created?
Only one.
Only one, right? With this particular employee ID, EMP1, only one object created. If I just change to prototype, right? Prototype, even though ID is same, every time you call context.getPin, every time you call context.getPin, there is a new object, right? There is a new object will be created. That is the reason why, right? So even though I'm setting here emp4.setName, this is going to be updated only for this particular object, only for this particular object. So what is happening here? Not this is for singleton. This is for singleton. So when it is coming to prototype, right? So I just put another line here. I just put another line. So the left hand side is singleton. You can consider like that. So when it is coming to prototype, right? There are multiple objects will be created. There are multiple, right? So 9 times we are calling, right? So 9 objects will be created, right? So each object, 4, 4, 8, 9, right? So each object will be mapped to a different reference variable in Java, right? So this is going to be pointed by emp1. This is going to be pointed by emp2, right? So this is going to be pointed by emp3, right? This is emp4, like that. There are emp9s, right? So every time you perform a lookup, every time you perform a lookup on the container, so container will create a new object. Container will create new object. Okay, so we are performing lookups, right? We are performing lookup for so this is emp7, right? emp7, not the 6, right? Not the 6. 7, 8, 9 also will be created, because we're going to perform 8 number of times or 9 number of times, right? So that is what the prototype. So here, as it's going to be one object given to the multiple reference variable. Here each reference variable will hold a different object. So if you just update, right, emp4, right, if you change the value in this object, the remaining objects, the value will not be changed. That is the way that we are getting Sunil Manaka printed, even though we are performing update, right? So the Sunil Kumar is going to be present only in EMP4, right? So the Sunil Kumar value, right? It's going to be presented in EMP4, but the remaining objects, we're going to have Sunil Manaka only, right? So in the remaining objects, so each and every reference variable is going to hold a different object. So until unless you update in the that particular object using the reference variable, the value will not be changed. Even though we are updating .emp4.set, emp4.set, only that particular object it's getting updated. But when it is coming to Spring, all reference variables are pointing to the same object. That's the reason why when I'm trying to change, right? When I'm trying to change with the E4, the impact is for all the nine reference variables. Okay, something like this, guys. Like just I'm a person, right? So I have to like some. Let's assume that I have two names, right? So one is like some people may call me like Sunil Manaka, right? Some people may call me like Sunil Kumar, right? Some people may call me like Sunil, right? Some people may call me Kumar, right? So these are all different reference variables, right? So all are referring to be the same person, right? All are referring to the same person. So it's a single object and different reference variables you can consider. But when it is coming to the prototype, so for each name, there is a different person, right? So each name, there should be a different person. So something like that, right? So now you guys tell me, right? So last time I told party and marriage are getting the same music reference, right? When the scope is singleton. So now if I change, for example, if I change this music scope to prototype, can you guys tell me how many objects will be created here in the AutoWare section? If I change it,
Two objects.
exactly, two objects, right? So how many number of times you do AutoWare, if the scope is prototype, those many number of objects will be created. If the scope is singleton, how many number of times you do AutoWare, there is no change, the same object will be given to the both classes. But here, these two are two different, right? So for party, earlier party and marriage, if the scope is singleton, it's like a centralized music system, right? Centralized music system. If the scope you change it to prototype, what you do, you just go ahead and arrange one music system for party, you go ahead and arrange for another music system for marriage, right? It's like two different music systems. But when it is coming to the singleton, then just think like a centralized, right? So you can do something like this in your office, right? In your company, there are multiple floors, right? Multiple floors. So usually we have a centralized AC, right? Centralized AC. So what you can consider that as a singleton, right? So for that building, the AC is centralized. But when you go for receptions, right? So each and every floor will have a different reception, right? So if, for example, if each and every floor a different company is operating, let's assume that usually whether it's a different company or same company, you have a different reception for each floor, right? So you can consider reception is a prototype, the AC, right? AC is a centralized, which means single. Okay, that's how you can just consider, okay, an example. So this is all about singleton and prototype. So the remaining scopes are it's easy, right? These scopes will be covered um, when we move into the web application. So similarly, we can also implement custom scope. Okay. So yeah, in Java or annotation configuration, right? We have to use this annotation at scope, right? At scope, right? So in XML, oh sorry, need to switch to different workspace. Let it go. Okay. So if it is a Java configuration or annotation configuration, similar to like lazy, right? At lazy, right? So something like this, we have at scope. So we have to specify. So at scope singleton, right? No need to specify because it's by default the singleton only. At scope prototype, at scope prototype, then only how to use the prototype. So at scope singleton or without scope, both are same because this is going to be the default. Okay, default. Every bean in Spring is singleton, right? Singleton. So that is the default feature. So Spring will create only one bean with that particular ID. So how many number of times you ask by that ID, it will return the same object. So specifying its scope and with singleton, there is no difference, right? There is no difference. No scope tag or scope with singleton soon will have the same meaning. But if you wanted to change the scope type, you wanted to convert it to prototype, then you have to change the its scope. You have to add this annotation. Its scope, you have to specify. Yeah. So let's see one example. A scope here. Okay. Now, very simple example I'm going to show you. Not, I don't want to make it complicated. Right? So I don't specify scope. So what is the default scope? Company. Default scope, company. If I go to my main class, right? So how many number of times I do access this, right? How many number of times I do access this? So we have XML configuration also defined, Java configuration, annotation configuration. Sorry, Java configuration, right? So we wrote the Java configuration. So no, right? It component we added. So I don't want to use this now. So we are going with this component. So are you okay with the font size? Do you want to increase?
Yeah, it is good.
Okay. Yeah. So I just this is a native application, right? Not Spring Boot application. Just let me remove all this code. Let's do the things with the Spring Boot, right? So I should annotate this class with Spring Boot application, and here what should I do? I should call Spring application dot run, And the primary class is like main that class, right? So our primary class is main class, and the second argument is object. So this is how we must uh, create our container, right? So application context equals to, okay, application context equals to, now you can do context dot get bean. So bean id, uh, yeah, so we are just using it component, right? So id becomes the class, right? So the first letter is small company, and just to avoid typecast, right, I just do this dot class, right? So we can assign this to company, right? Company. So company, yes. Okay, so just gonna print this. So instead of doing this, right, assigning into one variable and printing this to another variable, I just put these things inside system dot out, right? So yeah, yes. So right now we got object of company. So let's check what company name we have. So get name, right? Get name. Let's print the get name, and I want to do this for a couple of times. Just duplicate this, right, and run. So we are just getting 1 2 3 4, right? So this is equivalent to assigning it a variable, and I hope you are able to follow me what I'm trying to do, right? So this is equivalent to this, right? Company and equals to this, and getting printed the name, right? So calling the get name on company, right? So these two are equivalent to this, right? Two lines code can be converted into the one line. So let me run this code. Java application, okay, the same name. Oh, we didn't assign any name. Let's go to company. Let's give some name, right? Google, right? Yeah. So the same Google will be printing, right? So in between, right, if you change it, right, for example, I just wanted to change, right, in any one place, if I change it, right, so instead of get name, if I do set name and just assign some name, right, like Microsoft, right, set name, this is sorry, this is void return type, right, cannot be put inside system that have pattern. So I just move to outside. So if I run this, till this point of time, Google will be printed. After we are updating, so going forward, Microsoft will be printed. Same ID, same ID. So this is with the component, right? So let me add the scope. So scope, you just specify singleton, right? You just specify singleton, right? Sorry, not session, right? Singleton, or without specifying scope, there is no difference. So let's go to the main class and rerun the code. There is no difference in output. Okay. So when you see the kind of difference, you see the kind of difference like prototype, right? So none of the times the Microsoft will be printed because we are getting it here and we are not assigning it to any variable, right? So let's do this, right? Company equals to, right? So yeah, so first you get it, then set it again, get the object, set the value, get the name printed on the console, right? So yeah, so one time we will get Microsoft, for the remaining all the times we will get Google printed, right? So for which particular object we are updating, right, for which particular object we are updating, for that particular object the Microsoft will be printed. And you can see, right, the constructor is getting executed multiple times, right? Executing company 0 hour constructor, 0 hour constructor. So it's kind of 4 times we executed this constructor, right? 4 times we executed this constructor. Every time you perform context.get bean, a new object will be created. Okay, so that is what is the difference between singleton and prototype. Any questions?
No, sir, I'm good.
Yeah. What about others? Any questions here?
No question.
No, Sunil, we are good.
Yeah. There are two. I'm just telling you again that day how I explained the completable feature, how the kind of confusion you felt, you might get the same kind of thing, right? But yeah, it's a very rare scenario, right? The next topic like method injection, mixing two scopes, right? We do expect something works, but it won't work. I will tell you why, and I will tell you multiple solutions. So you just feel little difficulty, right? I will try my best, like I will try to make you understand. For sure, you don't understand for 100 percentage, you will get like 20 to 30 percentage understand. At least the basic idea, oh, this is what is happening, right? But you don't get like example wise, you get little confused, okay? Yeah. So, so we are good with the singleton prototype, right? In core, we will have only these two scopes, right? Request, session, and application will be covered. Okay, custom scope we will discuss later. We will complete this first. Okay, method injection. So I need all your higher attention now, right? We are going to discuss kind of like final, right? Bahubali, the final uh, fight, right? The Bahubali 1 final fight and Bahubali 2 final fight, like such a kind of complicated concept here. Okay, first I will show you one example. Okay, one example. So you just tell me what is the output we're gonna get. Okay. Do we have anything like method injection here? No, right. Okay. Let's go to the native Spring code. Yeah. So many files are there. Okay. uh, Let me open this. Okay. Okay. Assume that we're gonna work on an application called movie ticket book. Right? We're gonna work on an application called movie ticket booking. So I just create one class, right? One class like movie ticket book, and I one class for seat. Yes. So what I'm telling that, okay, this is going to be the singleton class, one class which gonna process our application. So this is going to be singleton, but the seat not singleton because every customer go and book the ticket, right? So we need to allocate a new seat, right? Otherwise, for all customer, if we allocate the same seat number, then those people will go and fight, right? Some kind of favorite hero movie releasing and all, then it's going to be really difficult, right? So it's very kind of like sensitive thing, right? We're not supposed to allocate same seat, right? Otherwise, somebody will file a case, case also, right? If you just allocate the same seat. So what we can do? So what we have to do here? So this movie ticket book can be singleton, but the seat has to be prototype, right? The seat has to be prototype. Both the classes I will try to create by using Java configuration, right? Both the classes I will try to create, right? But while creating it, I will make sure that okay, this is the singleton. One class is enough to process my request, but the seat has to be every request, right? For every request we need to allocate a new seat, right? For every customer, every request we need to allocate a new seat. So let's go to the Java configuration. Very plain configuration. Okay, so yeah, let me delete all this, right? Just we're gonna return this, right? Okay, so just create object for movie ticket. Return. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Let me make it. Okay. Yeah. So it's already we know this, right? There is nothing. That's specifying beans with scope singleton or without scope, both are same. So this is the singleton object, and this is the prototype, right? So now my movie and has a prototype. So this is the prototype object in my main class, right? So there should be some main movie book. Uh, yeah. So I'll change this to uh, main underscore movie underscore reservation, right? So reservation. Let me change something that's more readable format, right? So yeah. So now see this example. So I'm getting the object of movie ticket book and I'm calling get seat, get seat, get seat, right? So every time I call a get seat, I should get a new seat allocated, right? So for example, you logged in and you said, I want 4 seats, right? I just say call this for 4 times, right? Get seat, get seat. So every time a new object, new seat will be allocated because the seat is prototype, right? Seat is prototype. So every time I call get seat in movie ticket, right? You should get a new seat, right? So now one customer logged in, right? And he asked to book like 5 tickets or 6 tickets, right? 5 tickets or 6 tickets. So that's why I called for a couple of times. And finally, I'm printing the seat number, right? Printing the seat number. So if I run this code, can I get a new seat number every time? Which means a new seat reference, object reference printed on the console.
Yes.
Everybody,
Okay.
okay?
Can you
What
show
about
the
us?
seed once? Can you show the seed.java?
It's a plain class, no data inside. Just when I set, and that get means like the same reference, right? So you just call this, you just printed some reference variable. So if the reference is same means, which we can think that it's the same object. If the reference is not same, then you can think it's a different object. So it's nothing, just I don't want to implement too much business logic, right? I don't want to do a new real seed creation, just a simple application. This is singleton and this is prototype. And what I'm doing here, I'm just trying to get it right. So move it to get book and just call this get seed. So I configure this as prototype and this is singleton. So if you want, I can configure that singleton, right? Singleton, yes. So this is singleton bean and this is prototype B. So in my main application, I'm just calling get seed, right? So now what we are doing actually here, we are mixing two scopes, right? So I'm trying to inject prototype bean into singleton, right? So we are mixing two scopes here, but we are mixing singleton with the prototype. Okay. Yes, so we do expect a new seat will be printed every time, right? So we will think, oh, this is okay. So we get new seat will be printed. But when I go to real application, see the reference address. Is there any difference? No, right? It's the same seat, right? It's the same seat. We are not getting a different address, right? We are getting the same seat object every time, right? So whenever you mix two scopes, especially singleton and prototype, your prototype becomes singleton. The problem here is we did auto wire, right? So this auto wire is going to be happened only one time. Okay, so how many number of times you do call this get seed, right? The same object which is injected already, right? So you are not calling set seed every time. You are calling set get seed, right? Every time you are calling a get seed, so you're gonna get the same object because your auto while is going to be executed only once. So obviously, even though this prototype is right, even though we have prototype, right? Even though we have prototype available, right? So that won't work, right? So whenever you are mixing two scopes, right, especially singleton and prototype, so your prototype will automatically convert it into the singleton, right? Because the auto wire works only one time. So now do you get the what is the issue is happening here? Why it is happening here? Right? I told, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Confusion started, right? Slowly. Yeah, so don't think it's a confusion, just like it is a, like don't take it like it's a really complicated exam, right? I mean, complicated concept, right? This is one concept, like any other concept in spring, right? Don't get scared, right? Just think, okay, so this is singleton, this is prototype. We expected AutoWire will take care of that prototype, but it is not happening because AutoWire is happening only one time. Just because AutoWire is going to be happening only one time, that is the reason why. That is the reason why we are getting only one instance. Other than that, nothing else. Okay. The problem with AutoWire, not with the prototype, right? So AutoWire is happening only one time. So that's why we are getting the same object and the same reference printed, right? So this is the problem, right? So this is what we call it as method injection, right? So when we are mixing multiple scopes, So obviously your prototype becomes, right, when you are mixing singleton and prototype, your prototype becomes singleton because your auto word works only one, right? Your auto word works only one, right? So there are multiple solutions are available, right? Especially three solutions. We will always go with the solution number thread, right? Solution number three. So solution one and solution two, not good programming practices. Anyway, I will cover all three. But before that, we should understand what is the problem and why it is coming. Later, we can think about solution. Okay. So if you are clear with the issue, why it is happening, just give me yes. Then I will go ahead and cover the uh, solutions, how we can address this issue. Are you guys are clear with the issue, why it is happening?
Yes, sir.
Sunil, if we give the movie ticket as prototype and seat as singleton, that time also this issue will come or what?
Hmm. So
Will
Both are
will be
prototype.
both are prototype, then the issue won't come
no,
because
not both are prototype. I want that to be prototype and this to be singleton.
obviously this is new object, and but the seat is going to be same.
Yeah. Just want to see
You are
whether
just
what will
you
happen
are
to that.
reverse, right? So same issue.
Hmm.
Okay, but if
Hmm.
you make the movie ticket book is a prototype, so as we're gonna do like context to turn get been how many number of times, those many will come. Right? If you have the same scopes, then won't be any problem. When you are mixing the scope, then only the problem will come. Okay, so how we gonna address this problem? The first solution is remove this auto-ware. Okay, remove this auto-ware and implement application context aware interface. Okay, application context aware interface. So when you implement this interface, you have to override one method, right? Set application context. Okay, you don't need to call this method. Your container will call this method automatically. Right? And container will inject this application context into your application, right? So you don't need to call this. This is a callback method. Okay, so you don't need to call this. You will get an application context, a container instance injected. So in your getter method, what you have to do, you have to do this, right? Context.getBean, and what bean you want to get? You want to get the bean of type C. Okay, so every time you call get seed, now there is a new object. Will be created, right? There is a new object will be created. This is solution number one, right? Implementing application context aware. Then you have to override one method, set application context. This is the callback method. You don't need to call this method. Bring container itself will call this method and give the container access. So now every time we perform a lookup, right? So you call get bean for multiple times, right? Get seat, right? So get bean will be executed. So every time there is a new reference, right? See, now the reference variables are changing, right? 1626 435 712 4426 6166, right? 492. So every time you call get seed, right? So you are performing a lookup, right? So new object will be created. So this is what is the solution number one. Are you clear with the solution? So AutoWire won't perform this context or get bin for multiple times. That is the reason why it was not working as expected. But we changed it, right? We deleted AutoWire and we provided this. Okay. So this is what is the solution. But I think yesterday only, right? Yesterday, whenever we are talking about initializing bean, disposable bean, I told you one thing. What was that?
Implementing interface or extended classes. So that's the code practice.
Yes, right. So it is not at all a good programming practice to implement any interface from Spring and extend any interface from Spring, right? At least configuration class, okay. If your Java configuration is doing up to somewhat okay, but your main business logic class is doing or Bean class is doing, that is not at all acceptable, right? Like right, it is not at all acceptable. So immediately you will get a strong code review, right, saying yesterday only I told you to not do this, why you did this, right? So even though this is the working solution, we don't do this, right? very bad programming, right? So solution number one, even though it is working, we don't do this, right? Let's go back to our old code archive. We found some solution, but that is not a good coding standard or good coding practice. So again, we're back to issue, right? If I go back to the main class and run the code, right? Main class and run the code, again that issue will be replicated, right? So that we are allocating same seat, right? Same seat number for multiple customers, right? This is not our requirement, right? This is not our requirement. So anyway, the solution is available, right? One solution is available, but that is not a good practice, right? That is not a good practice. So what is the second solution we should do? Right? What is the second solution we should apply? So the second solution is making your class as abstract class. Okay, making your class as abstract class, and which which variable you want to be fetched multiple times, right? Prototype, that variable has to be annotated with at lookup, at lookup. And what you have to do, you have to write one abstract method, right? You have to write one abstract method. So what is going to be happen, at runtime? What is going to be happened at runtime? We just call this as get seat. Okay, you can remove these two methods, right? So this is an abstract class and abstract method. Public. That abstract cannot be private. That is error. Okay. So this is the second solution number two. Right? You're gonna write on one abstract class, and that abstract method, which property, which bean you want to get it as prototype, annotate that with lookup. Okay. So what is going to happen? So when you write code something like this at lookup, Spring will create one implementation class for this. Okay, Spring will create one implementation class for this. And what Spring will do, instead of we are implementing application context aware, Spring will implement, right? At runtime, Spring will create one implementation class for this, and Spring will at runtime, Spring will implement that application context aware, and Spring will try to do that application context that get in whatever the code we are writing, right? That is going to be written by the script. That is the only difference between the case solution one and solution two. Okay, so what is the difference between solution one and solution two? Instead of we are extending, instead of we are doing implements application context aware, instead of we are doing application context aware, Spring is going to do that for us. Right, Spring is going to do that for us. Okay, anyway, this is not the second, right? This is not the second solution, right? Not the good solution, right? It looks somewhat okay, not implementing, but we are creating a proxy class, right? We are creating a proxy class that will be little difficult, right? So that is not the proper solution, right? Even though we have second solution available, right? Even though we have the second solution available, we don't consider this, right? Again, we go back to the actual issue. Again, we go back to the actual issue, right? Then what is the solution I should apply, right? Which is the recommended solution? Which is the best practice we should do, Yes. While writing your Java configuration, okay? While writing your Java configuration, you just create the object. You just create the object, yes, right? You have to just override. You have to just override a particular getter method. So which method we are calling here? GetSit method you are calling, right? You have to override that method, getSit method. Inside getSit method, right? You have to override getSit method. Inside getSit method, you have to manually call this prototype bean, right? You have to manually call this prototype bean. So what and finally return that movie. Yes, yeah. So what is happening, instead of whenever you call get seat from your main application, whenever you call get seat from your main application, actually this get seat not be executed, right? So whatever the get seat which is present inside main movie ticket book, this won't be get executed, right? So the method which we override, right? The method which we override in our configuration, right? So this getSeat method will be executed. So this is from config getSeat method. Let's consider config getSeat. So every time you call get seat, so we are overriding, right? Overriding this get seat method. So this get seat method will be executed, right? This get seat method will be executed. From here, we are calling this get seat, right? From here, we are calling this get seat, right? We are not talking to any container. We are not getting, we are not doing any lookup abstraction. Nothing is there, right? This is the simplest solution, right? We just have to override. We just have to override get seat method in your bean declaration and call the actual seat, right? Actual seat method, which returns the prototype bean. So every time you call get seat method, instead of executing this method, right? Which get seat will be executed? The override method. So we're gonna get a new seat object, right? So if I just go to my main class application and rerun the code, right? See this. So which method is getting executed? Config gets it, right? So we don't call this gets it, right? We don't call this gets it. We actually call this, right? JVM will actually call this override method, right? Java override. So we're gonna get a new seat object. See, the reference variables are different, right? The reference variables are different. So this is how we must handle this mixing scopes concept. Okay, so this is what is the best practice, because we are not, right? So tomorrow if you wanted to apply, right, some more solution may come, right? Better solution may come. I don't change my business logic code, I just change my configuration. That configuration will obviously change, right? Configuration will obviously change, right? So that is okay, changing configuration is acceptable, but changing the actual business logic beans meters, right, that is not acceptable. Okay, so this is the best solution for issue mixing multiple scopes. Excuse me. Yeah. So is it clear, guys? Any questions? Yeah. As I
Sorry.
already told you, you don't
Right.
understand 100%. Yeah. Sorry. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So show your trying.
So how can we override if we are using at component?
At the rate component. No, no at the rate component. Oh, how we can do handle this with the at the rate
Yes.
component, right?
Yes.
Yeah, with the at the rate component we cannot handle this. So this has to be handled something like this. Okay, so whenever you are mixing scopes, right, don't use at component. Define Java configuration. Okay, but anyway, it's a
Okay.
very rare scenario. There are people who are working for a Spring for so many years. They would have been not come across this kind of issue, right? So if you really like some kind of architectural level kind of thing, right? So if you whenever you are mixing multiple scopes, you have to be very careful. At least you don't remember the solution what we're going to provide. At least remember the issue, because my code will be available in GitHub, right? Tomorrow, whenever you get some kind of requirement mixing multiple scope, okay, singleton and prototype, whenever you're mixing that, right? Whenever you're mixing that, so what you can do, okay, you can just check what solution I can apply. That time you can check this solution, but don't stick to the solution, right? Don't stick to the solution. Try to understand the concept, right? Here the concept is mixing multiple scopes. So whenever you are mixing singleton with a prototype, your prototype it automatically becomes singleton, because auto-wire, right? Because auto-wire which happens only one time. That is the reason why my prototype, even though my seat is it's like seat bean is a prototype, right? Even though my seat bean is prototype, I cannot, it won't work as we expected. It will work in a different way, right? This is also becoming, right? Even though we are thinking this is a prototype, it won't be prototype anymore, right? So that is what is the issue. So the solution is not use the Java configuration, and you must override getter method. Every time you call get seat, a new bean will be created. Yeah, as I already told you, it is a little confusing concept. So what you have to do, you have to do hands-on, right? Then only you could get better idea. As I already told you, even though I explain it, you still can't catch you 100%. You get like 20 to 30%, right? So what you have to do, you have to do hands-on, right? As I already said, right? Like 90 percentage of the developers who is working on microservices on Spring, right? They don't know this feature. So if you want to be in the like 10 percentage, right? The people who know, who can say that I'm very good in Spring or I'm expert in Spring, right? Then you must know all these concepts. Any questions? You just do hands-on for 1 or 2 times, then it will be more clear for you. Just try to execute this program, then you will get more better idea.
Basically, we are creating a new instance of seed object and then returning.
We are calling this prototype method every time. You call get seed, every time we call this seed inside. Instead of returning the reference variable, right? Instead of returning existing reference variable, we actually call this prototype seed method.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is equivalent to context.getBean only, but some underlying architecture will take care about it, right? So we don't need to worry about it. At least in our code, we don't, right? And this is the dependency injection way of doing the things, right? If I directly do context.getBean of prototype, then that is not the solution. That is not a good. That is like dependency lookup. So this is dependency lookup and this is dependency injection. Somewhere internally it's going to be happen through dependency lookup only, but we don't do it. Who is going to do? Dependency injector, right? We already said, right? It's a dependency injector will take over.
Yeah, clear.
Any questions? Okay, so with this we are completed scopes, right? Yeah, so I hope you understood, right? The concepts are getting increased, right? We started with the core Java, then Maven. Slowly we are increasing the concept, right? So if you don't practice, then things will become more complicated, right? Yes. Okay. Spring bean scopes and callback mechanism is done. Yeah. So once with this, we're almost completed. We're almost completed native core Spring applications. From now onwards, everything we're going to talk about Spring Boot, right? We're going to compare our features with Spring Boot, right? And we're gonna like learn, right, how to read the Spring externalized configuration, right? Properties file, YAML configuration, Spring Boot, how we can do a profile management, right? From now onwards, it's like the things which we're gonna discuss, like in most project oriented, right? Every concept we're gonna discuss for sure. We will use every concept in project for 100% sure. We will implement this, right? From now onwards. Any questions you have? Till now, whatever we discussed. If not, we will continue. Or if you want to stop for today and you want to continue tomorrow, that is also fine. What we do? Shall we continue?
Can we continue tomorrow? So,
Yeah, sure. But for
sorry,
sure,
it's little late today, so
yeah. And no problem. We will continue tomorrow. But make sure you complete this assignment, right, before you are coming to the class. You complete whatever we discussed today. Okay, that's why I'm telling you, practice on daily basis. Spring Boot, right? Full of Spring Boot. So like we start with few Spring Boot features, okay? Few Spring Boot features, and every application is going to be Spring Boot, okay? And how the Spring Boot will convert the exceptions into errors, and what is auto configuration, and the best coding practices, what we have to follow to write the Spring Boot application, and how to load the configuration. For sure, we load some configuration in your application. For sure, there are so many ways you do. And the next concept called profile, right? So we have multiple environments: dev environment, QA environment, production environment. So if we have multiple environments, how you gonna how you go and load that the environment specific configuration, right? So when you deploy your Spring Boot application, for example, you have different databases, right? Dev we have a different database, QA we have different database, production we have a different database, right? So we have different databases. How you load that different databases into your Spring application, okay? And how we gonna enable logging, right? Logging. So when you write your microservice, what type of logging mechanism you want to uh, enable to your microservice, right? So we will discuss with that. So it like next external will take 2 sessions. Profile and login will take one more session. So like 2 sessions, like last 2 sessions, we are done with the core concept. Like maybe like 2 or 3 sessions after, you start writing your microservices, right? I will jump like we will be jumping into MVC module. Right? From here, we will start our development, right? So with MVC, you can start your first RESTful web services. When we discuss JDBC, then you integrate database module. When you discuss data JPA, right? It's again database module only, but 2 applications you have, right? So you have MVC with one JDBC, okay, MVC with one data JPA. So 2 applications you have, but it's a final goal is same, right? Be connected to the database, but the amount of code we write is very less with respect to data JPA. And we apply security on top of that on the same application, okay. Then yeah, yeah. So till now, whatever we discussed, right? It's with MVC. Once we discussed with about reactive programming, right? So the same application we develop in reactive programming, okay? Reactive programming. Then yeah, we will apply the security. Then we will write one SOAP web services, right? With that, we will get good hands-on, right? Good hands-on like microservices development. Then we go for the real microservices architecture, how it looks like in the real-time approach, right? In the real-time approach, how it looks like and what are the challenges will come. We will look into the challenges, right? So in the real, so once we are done with all this module development, we jump into the microservices. Okay, maybe from day after tomorrow or day after, maybe like after 2 days or 3 days, we will start this MVC, right? From there, you can consider our microservices journey starts, right? Microservices journey starts. So till now we are just learning the rules, right? Rules and regulations of this microservices game, right? So maybe like next 2 to 3 sessions, we will complete this core fundamentals.
Sunil, like which database we will be connecting?
Yeah, I installed MySQL. Most probably you also try the same thing, right? RDBMS, MySQL, open source, right? Yeah. So
Neo4j is possible.
no, that is a GraphQL, right? So that is completely a different database.
Okay.
So the scope for using Neo4j in the real-time microservices very less. So most of the times we go with RDBMS, right? Most of the databases RDBMS. So we have databases are something like this, right? SQL, which called RDBMS. So RDBMS we have so many flavors, right? All this comes in the same umbrella, right? So what are all those? Oracle, MySQL, Postgre, right? The DB2, so all this comes into same umbrella RDBMS. Then we have another database called NoSQL, right? NoSQL like Cassandra. We will see one example if required. Cassandra, MongoDB. We will install MongoDB and we will see one example. Okay, and Redis, and we have some other word I forgot that. Okay, yeah. So there are so many NoSQL databases. Something like this we have GraphDB, right? So which is Neo4j, right? So the scope of using Neo4j is very less, right? So Neo4j. So GraphDB is scope is very rare. So mostly we focus right on RDBMS main, like 1 or 2 examples with MongoDB.
Okay.
Yeah. So I choose MySQL, right? That is open source. We don't have any license issues under. That's why we choose MySQL. But any RDBMS, it's equal. There is no difference, right? Oracle, MySQL, Postgre, DB2, right? SQL Server, right? So these are different vendors, right? Oracle from Oracle, MySQL it was from Sun Microsystems. Now it's owner like Oracle only. Postgre like some third party. DB2 from IBM. MySQL Server, SQL Server from Microsoft, right? So different vendors has different versions, but all are same RDBMS. The same concept, like storing the information in tables, right? Columns and rows format. So any one RDBMS is enough. So even the same concept for NoSQL also, Cassandra, MongoDB, Redis. So we can't learn all these, right? So we just complete one NoSQL database, which is MongoDB. So you just try if you want to learn. If your project requirement is Cassandra, so with the experience we got in our project, right? So in our training, you just start implementing Cassandra and let me know if you are facing any issues. Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. It's completely depends upon project to project, right? Some companies use Oracle, some companies use DBS, DB2, some companies use Postgre. We can't learn all one time, right? So depends upon company and project requirement. You have to, you have to start increasing your skill set and learning new technologies. But we go with the most commonly used thing, which is most open source, like that we go. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Any more questions before we wind up the session? Okay.
No, Sunil, we'll try it. Maybe after trying, we may get a lot of practice.
Yeah. So Sharath is asking any link for basic shortcuts. Yeah, I will just search in the Google. If I find any link, right, I will let you know, Sharath. I will share through email to all the people, right? So who are new to Eclipse, right? They can just start using those shortcuts. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that will be helpful for me.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Thank you, team. Thank you, guys. See you tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Same time tomorrow, 8:50. Sure.
Thanks, Sunil.